Hello and welcome to my channel Tall Talks from a Short Lady. In this video, I'm going to take you through the topic of verbal communication. So, I'll start by talking about how we communicate. Now, we have two ways available to us. The first one is verbally, and the second one is non-verbally, as you can see through this cartoon of Calvin and Hobbes. So, verbal plus non-verbal communication, these two put together are known as the methods of communication, and sometimes they're also referred to as the different medium of communication. Moving on, I would first like to talk about what is the meaning of the word verbal, because at times we are mistaken into thinking that the word verbal refers to verbs. Now, verbal actually means anything to do with words, and some of those words that you're using may be in the verb form. So now that we are clear with the meaning of the word verbal, we understand that we use words when we are speaking and also when we are writing. So both oral and written communication come under the purview of verbal communication. So, first, I would like to start with the oral communication or speaking, and it is because we spend the lion's share of our day speaking. And in terms of our workday communication, we spend around 50 to 80% of the day communicating at office. Now, out of that, almost two-thirds of the time is spent in speaking only, where we speak face to face, we give presentations, we attend meetings and group discussions, and the list can go on and on. So, the next question is then why do we talk so much? We talk so much because there are so many advantages to speaking. The first one is that it takes less time and effort. So, speaking is fast and instantaneous. You just have to think of the words, you don't need preparation, and you can simply speak it out. Next, it costs relatively less. Now, note that I'm using the word relatively because in the past, oral communication was cost free. People would only talk face to face. But in today's time, at the least, you need a handset, you need maybe internet connectivity, or you need a telephone network, which costs some amount. So it's not totally inexpensive, but relatively less expensive. Next is with oral communication, you can immediately figure out from the feedback of the person whether the person has understood your message or not. And in case they haven't, you can go ahead and clarify it again and again until your purpose is solved. Next is it is easier to modify the content when you're speaking. For example, if I make a mistake while giving this presentation, I can simply say sorry to my audience, I can make the corrections, and I can move on. Next, there are more reasons why speaking is preferred. It carries different shades of meaning with tonal inflection. I've already given examples of how you can, change the meaning of the same sentence just by varying your tone and stress on each word of the sentence. And because it has tonal variation, it is more warm, it is more persuasive, and it is also more personal in nature. So, if you want to convince your mom to give you permission to go out with your college friends on a trip, then mostly you will not be writing a request letter to her. You will be sitting and talking to her face to face to convince her. Next good thing about spoken communication is that even illiterate people can speak. There is no need for any formal training, and the blind can speak to with ease. There is absolutely no problem. So, the moment things are too good, it makes you wonder whether there are any drawbacks or not. So, to answer your question, of course, oral communication has a lot of drawbacks. First of all, is that it is prone to distortion. By the time your message has gone to the second or third listener, you have no control over what the original message and what you intended the other person to listen to. So, it is almost like Chinese whisper. Then the impact is temporary. I always tell my students that they have the memory of goldfish, which is around 3 seconds. So by the time I finish uttering a sentence, and if I ask them to repeat it, most of them wouldn't be able to repeat it in the right order, because oral communication, the impact is temporary and also the retention is less. Moving on, when we are using oral communication, in the court of law, it does not hold a lot of weightage, and unless it is recorded, it has some kind of permanent existence, it's not valid, in the court of law. Next one is oral communication is distance related, in the sense if you're talking face to face also, only within a certain range can you talk to each other, and if you move away too far, you may not be able to hear each other. Similarly, if somebody is placed in Timbuktu and there is no internet connection, or there is no telephone network, then even if you want to reach out to that person, you will not be able to do it. There are some more drawbacks. Now, it is difficult to explain complicated matters orally, and hence, all the textbooks that you have are in the written form. You will never find any subject being delivered or sold in the CD form, if rarely ever. Next is, your problems in terms of accent and the nervousness that you feel when you're talking immediately shows through or comes through when you're talking to people. People can pick it up, and also you will notice that before you have to talk to an unknown crowd, you are constantly anxious, and this causes a lot of performance anxiety. And the last one is that oral communication is no good for a person who is deaf and cannot hear what you are saying. So these are some of the advantages and disadvantages of oral communication. Next, I'll be moving on to written communication, and I would like to give a little statistics on it first. Now, Adobe found that just on emails, we spend around 3.1 hours per day. Now, if you calculate, that comes to around 15.5 hours per week, and a shocking 20 weeks of the entire year. Now, this is just on emails. Imagine we also have to get through faxes, memos, notices, emails, reports, proposals, training manuals, legal contracts, and it can just go on and on and on. So, if you are indulging in so much of written work, it means that there are some good qualities about writing. So, written communication, it works when we want to avoid distortion of the original message. If you want exactly what you intended to reach the receiver, then you fall back upon writing. It is easy to keep a record to refer to again and again, and very good example would be all the mark sheets and report cards that you have collected since your childhood days, and how you can go back to it again and again. Next is, if you want to use something as proof in the court of law, then only written documentation works. So every time you are involved in anything that involves money, like a purchasing of property, a new car, a business deal, all of this works out in the written form. Next is, writing gives you a lot of time to think, to analyze, and edit. Unlike in written oral communication, where you have to think and immediately speak it out, this gives you a lot of time to compose your message. And because you get so much time to compose your message, you can be more accurate, you can be more precise, and in fact, you can say the same thing that you want to say with the use of minimum number of words. Next is, when you're writing, it is easy for you to be very thorough and you don't miss out the point. So when I go shopping, I generally carry a shopping list with me. I write it down, because when I write it down, I know that I'm not going to miss out any point. But the moment I go shopping without the shopping list, if I have just tried to memorize whatever I was supposed to get, verbally heard it and just gone ahead, I would most probably forget a few things or two. Next is, when you are writing, it hides your performance anxiety. Nobody can see through the pen and paper. And next is, you don't have to have any kind of accent, right accent, British accent, American accent. None of these really matter when you're writing. Now, Obviously, if there are good points, I said there is always two sides to the coin. So some of the disadvantages of written communication is that it's no good when we want to save time which is required for writing. Writing takes some amount of time to think, analyze and edit, whereas speaking is pretty fast. And to give you an example, if you are hurt in an accident, you would most probably start orally communicating, asking for help instead of writing a letter. Next is that written communication becomes a little expensive, so if you want to cut down on the money part, then written communication is not for you. uh, Next is, you have no control over when the receiver would read the message. So if you want the other person to read it immediately, if it is urgent, then written communication does not help a lot. And obviously, since you have no control over when they're going to read, so again, feedback and providing any kind of clarification also gets delayed. To take up some more points, written communication is no good when you want to convey different shades of meaning. People will read just one meaning, whatever they want to read in your sentences. Next is because the tonal quality is missing in written text, you cannot inject it with any kind of warmth or a personal touch. And mostly illiterate people will not be able to use written communication because it needs some amount of formal training. And also for communities which have no written script, for example, the Navajo community, these are the Native Americans, they're also referred to as red Indians. They have the Athabascan dialect or language, but there is no written script for. So for these people, again, written communication is no good. Now, this is what I have to say in terms of verbal communication. For other topics on communication, you can please refer to the description box. And the name of my channel is Tall Talks from a Short Lady. Make sure you go ahead to the description box and have a look at the quiz. And I will say thank you now.